Dear friends, we are all teachers, so it is a fraternal gathering, and there is no need for any formal distance between you and me. I am one among you. In your banner backdrop, 3 Jindabas are mentioned. One is teachers' unity, employees' unity, and workers' unity. I hope that you are all aware of the distinction between these three, though all of them can be categorized as working class. We are very critical, even cynical of this new education policy or national education policy. It is nothing new now. National education policy, because they try to convert you from teachers to employees. They do not want you to teach. They want to treat you as mere employees to carry out the diktats from the top. Teachers' self-respect is in grave danger. If you want to redeem your self-respect, if you want to serve the larger society, we must find out the obstacles placed by the ruling clique, which would frustrate our objectives. So let us not be very formal, thematic in our discussion. You are free to put questions, put your views to me. It will be an exchange of views that would enrich both of us. The documents, successive documents on national education policy, repeatedly glorify the past and want to conserve, sometimes revive the past. There lies our difference with them. The national education policy documents, when you go through it, we will find that they used to say that we had a glorious past. We had Gurukulas, we had Nalanda, we had Tachasila, and we had lost that glory later on due to foreigners, foreign religion, foreigners. They tried to give a communal interpretation for the decline of the past glory. And now they say that we must restore our cultural heritage. In history, we used to call it revivalism. Revivalism. You want to revive something which is not existing now, but which were existing in some remote past. So on that particular point, I want to share my views with you today. The concept of education was entirely different. In our Sanskrit literature, they used to emphasize on vidya. That may mean both knowledge and skill. But that vidya is meant for a particular category of people. Vidya for the privileged, denial of vidya for the underprivileged. This was our past. They say that Vedic education was the best in the world. We are the teachers in the world, and our present Prime Minister used to emphasize that we are to be the Vishwaguru, the teacher for the entire global community. So what sort of education was conceived by our Vedic ancestors? Here I want to say that the Vedic group was one of the Indian groups that flourished in this subcontinent. And Vedic group was not the only people who existed in this land. Unfortunately, in history, that only group is projected as a group that created a nation. The nation was created by the contribution, by the coordination of several groups. They say that Gurukula system was an ideal system. What does it mean? The Guru belonged to a particular Kula and he conducted that hermitage for privileged Kulas. Guru of the Kula, Kula of the Guru. This was Gurukula. Veda was not embodiment of universal knowledge. It contained merely adorative hymns. They make demands to the Almighty, not the only Almighty, different Almighties. Indra for warfare, Varuna for rain, and different gods for different purposes. Vedas contained only the songs demanding certain favors from the deities. These adorative hymns. The collection of these hymns is known as Vedas. What they did in the Gurukula, they taught the students how to pronounce it, how to chant it, and later on, how to associate with the rituals. To be very frank, we must say that there was nothing but skill development. They were promoting skills of chanting the hymns and linking it with rituals. Skill is not to be misconstrued as knowledge. Knowledge is different from skill. Of course, skills are necessary. We don't decry the skills, but skill alone cannot serve the purpose. Chanting the mantras, how it is going to change the society? It never changed the society. And that education system, Kulas, Gurukulas, are being projected as an ideal system in the education policy documents. That itself will indicate that the makers of the policy or the people who were working behind this drafting of the policy, their interests were something different. They did not share our interest in education. Our interest is something different. We want education to be inclusive for all. And we want education to be affordable so that it could be inclusive. We want education to be many-sided. Education should have versatility. Otherwise, it is not education. But this national education policy did not want the development of knowledge, but it wants to promote skills among the middle-level people and the low-level people so that they would never aspire for power sharing. They would never become the leaders in politics, leaders in finance, leaders in judiciary. They were to be content with the mere skills. As a responsible organization of teachers, can we concur with these objectives of national education policy? To be very frank, Nalanda did not belong to the Vedic group of people. Gurukulas were meant for Vedic education. Nalanda, Dakshashila, Vikramashila, all these institutions, they were not Gurukulas. This Gurukula was meant for the so-called higher category of people in the society, Savarnas, or the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. The Gurukulas were run by rishis who were given large tracts of land in another territory, not in the king's own territory. The lands were assigned in the neighboring territory so that they would provoke a warfare between the two kingdoms. Vishwamitra brought Rama to a distant territory so that Tadaga would oppose that. So the very purpose of starting Gurukula was meant to provoke political, military or ethnic conflict. But what about this Dachasila, Mahavidyalaya, Dachasila, Gurukula, this Kashi, even Kashi was a famous center for universal education. These were the works of those who raised their voice against the status quo, raised their voice against the monopoly of certain categories over education and power. The Brahmanic thoughts were opposed by Shramanic thoughts. The Brahmanic thoughts were based on privileges for a few, denial for many. The Shramanic school of them, Buddha was the greatest one. The Shramanas refused to accept that somebody was born to Devas, others were born to the Satans. The Shramanas argued that all human beings are human beings. Nobody can be called a divine origin, others can be of a lower origin. The Shramanas believed in equality in humanity. Those Shramanas refused divinity for any particular segment. Those Shramanas argued for an inclusive order. So, their Sanghas, the Buddhist and Jain Sanghas, they were the first to start public schools. What existed earlier? Clannish institutions. Public schools were first organized by the Shramanic school of thought, where there was no restriction for entry for teaching on the basis of caste, varna, even on nationalities, language. People from China came here to study in Nalanda. People from Persia came to Tachasila to have a higher learning. And this curriculum was entirely different. This curriculum in this Nalanda, Tachasila and other Mahavidyalayas were more inclusive. They taught astronomy, they taught medicine, they taught logic. They did not confuse theology with philosophy. These are two different things. Theology is based on faith. You cannot question. You'll have to accept. But philosophy questions. It promotes probing into to know what is truth behind it. Skepticism is the basis of the Shramanic ideology. So all these Shramanic institutions were broad-based ones, without restriction on the basis of caste, community, creed, nationality, language. These two different kinds of schools existed in India was not recorded either in the policy or in the curriculum or in the textbook. They used to claim credit for these Mahavidyalayas. Mahavidyalayas were entirely different. So we must have that understanding that we do not want the revival of Gurukulas. Of course, we would appreciate the Mahavidyalayas, but even the Mahavidyalaya system is out of date today. They cannot bring in modern education. We believe in change and progress. The whole thing must be changed. And everything should be towards progress. National education policy would not concur with these objectives. So our concern, our opposition, our resistance to national education policy is based on not that we are given lesser pay, our service conditions are not satisfactory, not that. These were issues. But these are not our main concern. Our main concern is that this policy is against the society, against the national integration. This national education policy will promote exploitation, social gaps, and what you call profiteering business. how they want to give an alternative policy. They claim too much. But what is in fact there? This national education policy, the main core, the core intention of the national education policy is that it stands for absolute centralization. Absolute centralization. The entire education of the entire nation must be in the hands of the union government. Absolute centralization. And then increasing bureaucratization. When for a country like India, which is a very vast and larger, if you put everything in a single hand, naturally it will lead to bureaucratization. We know our bureaucrats, their interest, their clannish interest, how they will use it or abuse it. You know it. Bureaucratization. To give you an example, we are in the higher education system. UGC gives us a uniform syllabus for every subject. The first uniform syllabus was on history. Who drafted it? Which body drafted it? Normally, in the system, since our independence, even before that, the Board of Studies, a body of experts in the particular field, will take up the business. They will draft the curriculum. They will draft the syllabi. And that would be perused by the academic council. They would even offer some changes that will be carried out Board of Studies. So educationalists used to draft the syllabus so far. But today we find that UGC, a bureaucratic body, issues the syllabus to different universities to be followed. They never tell us who drafted that syllabus. We know that it emanated from Nagpur. What the RSS wanted to be taught to the students, the UGC now supplements the effort. We are not mere employees. We are teachers. We have got a social concern. We must be a party in the syllabus making, in the curriculum making. But we are now deprived of our privileges, our rights in syllabus making. Bureaucratization. Then comes corporatization, not even privatization. We had private bodies contributing to education in our country for the past 150 years. But most of the private bodies were philanthropic agencies, the Christian missionaries, who contributed a lot for public education. They started thousands of schools all over India and facilitated the downtrodden to have education. The missionaries worked for it. So private philanthropy contributes to education so far. But here, philanthropy is not supported by the new education policy. Private profiteering agency must have the highest say in the education policy and structure. The school complex system which they suggested in the national education policy, what does it mean? Let the small little schools in the villages would perish, and school complexes with many facilities, fanciful facilities, would be an alternative. So elitism enters there. Whenever elitism enters into education, you must know that it is meant for cheating people and making a profit out of this. Of course, it is in tune with the international fora, IMF. Education should be a commodity, not a service. In our constitution, education is a service. What is today happening is that entirely different. Education is a commodity which the private bodies can use for making profit. It is a business now. the complex school complex system, the college complex system, which the national education policy insists would facilitate only an exclusive education system, not inclusive education system. Education becomes very expensive, very complex, complicated, and the system has so many things that would, what you call, intimidate students, harass students, and would force them to prefer for dropout. In the independent India, the earlier governments, we are an organization like ours, used to insist that there must be universal, free, compulsory school education. Common education system, school education. Now, on the pretext of skill promotion, after the 8th standard, the students are now encouraged to move out of the institution. For every semester, there will be an examination. If you are reluctant to face the examination, you can opt out. We will give you a certificate in skills. What type of skills? The government does not accept the responsibility of promoting the modern skills. Go to anybody within the area. You have some skill in herding the cattle or in picking up flowers, whatever it may be. Something like KULUKKAI or the system which was attempted to be introduced in Madras Presidency by Rajaji, which was resisted by the popular movements here, ultimately had to be given up. The skills, modern skills are not ensured. The government has no plan to introduce workshops on electricity or electronics in schools. It wants students to go to the farms, to go to the factories which are available nearby, and to have some skills. They will certify them. Skill promotion is not meant for modernization, but to make the students of the middle level, lower level classes to drift out of the educational institutions, as if some instant jobs are available to them. Education is not an instant coffee. They say that if you have skill, you will get immediately employment opportunities. But what is the real intention? The masses, the working classes, the peasants, their children will be content with the lower level employment. And the affordable section would have every opportunity available for them at the higher level. Skill, in the name of skill education, they are reintroducing the Varna segregation which ruined our society so far. Are we going to keep silent on it? Friends, you must know that no system in the past was enjoined with popular education, public education. Any dharma, Hindu dharma or Islamic dharma, whatever it may be, government was not expected to provide public education in the past. They used to patronize religious institutions to have their own institutions. They used to give them grant. Jains were the first to talk about Dhanas, different kind of Dhanas. In our Vedic literature, we find so many Dhanas. Godana, Gajadana, Bhudana, Kanakadana. So many Dhanas are there, all for the priestly class. And Dhanas are received by one particular segment from the kings or from the people. But Jains were the first to categorize some Dhanas which were meant to be given to the poorer people. Annadana, for the starving people. Vastradana, for the people who do not have the cloth. Vastradana. Vidyadana or Shastradana, giving education to those people who have no opportunity for education. So, The Sramana schools insisted on Dhanas to others. The non-Sramanic, what you call Sanadani schools, used to insist on Dhana to the priestly class. It was not the government's responsibility to provide education for the common people earlier too. Only the Buddhist Sangha and the Jain Sangha did that. Later on, the Christian missionaries, they did that work. Only in the modern age, education came to be viewed as a government's responsibility. That too after the October Revolution, in order to counter the spread of communism, the Western governments introduced welfare measures, something like pension system, gratuity, pension, everything was introduced in the Western countries only to counter the spread of communist ideology. And they too accepted the responsibility of providing education to the poorest section. So our constitution to insist on government's responsibility to provide education. So government has three roles to play: provider of education, facilitator of education, regulator of education. Three rules are there: provider, facilitator, and regulator. With the increasing hold of corporate sector over education, now there is no further additional grant for education in our budget. They say that the financial constraints are there. We are unable to provide for government schools, even for appointments of teachers in government schools. They are outsourcing the teaching to others. So government is unwilling to play the role of provider. Facilitator, of course they are facilitators. They are facilitating the corporate sector to spread their tentacles. They are not facilitating in the people, masses, to have education. They are facilitating the corporates to have absolute control over the educational system. What we expect is that government should facilitate the people to have better education. And regulator, the state government's regulatory authorities are being now undone. The central government assumes the entire power of regulation. Constitution provided this responsibility to the states. Right from 1919 Act, 1935 Act, 1950 Act, education was vested with the state government because that government is nearer to the people. So if anything happens, people will question only the nearest authority, not the distant authority. So in all the federal states all over the world, education is the responsibility of the constituent states and not the federal government. Whether it is America or Australia, wherever it is, education is accepted as a responsibility of the state government. We had enacted so many legislations. We had introduced University Acts. We have introduced to School Regulation Act. In Tamil Nadu, there is Private Colleges Regulation Act, Private Schools Regulation Act, only to regulate so that the teachers are not exploited, students are not exploited by the private agencies. So we used to have regulatory authority over educational institutions, education system. But now this new national education policy deprives the states of this regulatory authority. So constitution is being wrecked here. That constitution, which wanted a progressive change in the people's life, which incorporated directive principles, that constitution is being now undone by the proposed schemes under the national education policy. Foreign agencies can enter into the arena as a competitor with the local agencies. So there can flourish only two categories of institution in India: One is Swadeshi corporate, another is Videshi corporates. Their patriotism is confined to Swadeshi corporates. So Ambani can have a school of excellence without a structure, without a teaching faculty. He can have an international institution. So that category of approach, the states are deprived of their power. The unions, government and bureaucracy helps only the corporate sector. And in order to discourage the service sector from gaining any upper hand in the education, they are introducing the ranking system. Until recently, there was only a ranking system for the higher education. This system, the present national education policy, introduces accreditation for the schools too. Ranking means only those institutions which have the resources to have fancied exhibitions will flourish. Others will not be favored even by the parents of the poorer segments. So overtly and covertly, they are encouraging corporatization of education, and our masses will remain as masses. The elite sector will flourish and grow further. So we are going to see a widening gap between the Varga and Varna. So the gaps are going to be increased. How we are going to confront this situation? More than that, wrong histories are being provided, wrong sciences are being projected, because they do not want knowledgeable people. They want only to produce fanatics and chauvinists. Darwin has no space in the school curriculum, and social reformers had no space in the history curriculum. We must accept that we had Vaimanika Shastra in the past. So here they want to bring us back to the ignorant past. They do not want to lead us to an enlightened future. Education is not meant for that purpose. Education cannot be construed as a tool of promoting knowledge and skills of individuals. It has a better role, social transformation. It should help us to break the status quo. It should help us to build a bright future where equality, equity, and justice would prevail. This present proposal education system would not help. On the other hand, it would destroy even the existing facilities in public education. That is why, friends, I want to insist that the teachers must raise their voice adequately. Not simply a protest letter is sufficient. There are three ways. We record our dissent. No, we don't agree. Then we go for protest. Second stage. Both stages are now over. What we need now is, beyond this dissent and protest, we must resist. It is time for resistance to the injustice educational system. Are we prepared to resist? If we want to resist, we must be well organized. We must have clarity of thought, clarity of objective, and we must coordinate with other fraternal bodies. It is not a simple issue. Resistance is not a simple issue. It requires more strength. We'll have to mobilize strength. So we must coordinate our efforts with other progressive agencies, enlighten that our future is in danger. Our nationhood is in danger. Our nationhood is a federal nation, not a unitary nation. And here they are giving a wrong explanation to culture. They say that culture is to be conserved. preserved. Friends, culture is not conservation of the past. Acculturation means change. Even the culture must undergo change. There was a tradition when the young girls were given, even the kids were given in marriage. The widows of 9th year or 10th year were immolated. That was our tradition. In the name of culture, can we revive them? Culture is not a static one. Culture should also undergo transformation. Education should take into consideration today's cultural, the reference to cultural education in this educational policy is meant for revival of the old unjust order. Let us raise our voice in favor of cultural transformation too. We want to become the members of a modern society. The world is too wide. We want to be a respectable partner in the global society. So all those things needs a healthy discussion among ourselves and a honest effort to undo what is being done by the present government. There were 3 educational policies so far. 1968, after the Kothari Commission, the first national education policy in India, independent India. The second one, 1986, Rajiv Gandhi's national education policy. We were very critical of the organizations fought against them. They were critical, not that we opposed it entirely, but we were critical. And we were able to change some of them because all the recommendations were only recommendatory. They were not mandatory. Only the present education policy had become mandatory. It is not recommendatory. The states have no role to play. And we must retrieve not only our rights, our role, the state government's role, even the people's rights in education by carrying on a national level struggle against the new education policy. To our dismay, we find that there are political confederations in India. But these political alliances do not make education policy a major issue for consensus. Many states are not discussing it. West Bengal had accepted it. So our efforts to organize a resistance should lead to the political parties conceding to demand the rejection of the national level education policy. Thank you. The rest we shall discuss in our question answer. Thank you.
உன் கடவுளை விட உன் சாஸ்திரத்தை விட உன் முன்னோரை விட உன் வெங்காயம் வழக்கமாத்தை விட உன் அறிவு பெருசு அதை சிந்தி